I'll never forget the morning I walked down to my shoreline and saw that brand new sign hammered into the soft dirt, bright white letters shouting out, HOA Lake Access. For a second I thought I was still half asleep, but no, it was planted right in front of my dock, as if overnight my private lake had magically been claimed by a group that had nothing to do with it. That was the moment I realized things weren't just neighborly misunderstandings anymore. This was war, and the person behind it was sharper, bolder, and a whole lot more desperate than I had imagined. Her name was Diane Caldwell, the president of our homeowners association. If you don't know what it's like living under an HOA, let me paint you a picture. It's like having a second government, except this one is run by whoever yells the loudest at community meetings. Diane looked polished on the outside, always in neat blazers and heels, carrying her little red binder like it was the Bible. She pulled up to my property later that morning, stepped out of her spotless sedan, and with the kind of smirk that makes your blood pressure spike, she told me, "This lake was never really yours to control. It belongs to the community, and I've got the paperwork to prove it." She slid a folder across my porch table like she was delivering gospel. I opened it. Looked like some kind of conservation easement, stamped and official looking at first glance. But I'm not just some weekend cabin dweller. I am a licensed water rights engineer. I live and breathe permits, surveys, state codes. Within 30 seconds I spotted what was missing. No proper seals, no filing numbers. Half the pages weren't even signed. I laughed, maybe too loud, and said, "Diane, this is about as real as Monopoly money. You forged an inspection request, didn't you? You didn't need to be a detective to know who it was." The next stunt hit harder because it wasn't just about land, it was about control. I walked down to check my water line and found an unfamiliar padlock clamped on the main valve. That's not just petty, that's dangerous. My attorney told me it could be classified as tampering with infrastructure. I snapped photos, documented everything, stored it in a neat folder because I knew sooner or later all these puzzle pieces would matter. Diane wasn't stopping at fences and locks though. She started calling my clients behind my back, whispering about instability and violations. By the end of the month, I'd lost more than 20 grand in contracts. That one hurt. Sitting at my desk, listening to those voicemails, I felt the weight of her words like stones thrown at my reputation. But I archived every single message because lies leave fingerprints. Then came the big HOA meeting, where Diane really thought she'd put me in the ground. She dimmed the lights, set up a projector, and threw up these doctored images showing flood risks and erosion threats supposedly caused by my restoration project. People in the room gasped, and I'll admit, for a second I felt like I was being tried in front of a jury of neighbors. I stood up, cleared my throat, and laid out the actual state-approved assessments, the permits with signatures and seals, the work logs. You could feel the room split down the middle, half shaking their heads at her scare tactics, half whispering doubt about me anyway. That's the thing about rumors, they don't need to be true to do damage. They just need to be loud. Just when I thought I might drown under the noise, allies started surfacing. Mrs. Henderson, who'd lived here 30 years, handed me a stack of HOA invoices that didn't add up. Then Rebecca, a resident who happened to be a CPA, sat down at her kitchen table with coffee and spreadsheets. She traced payments to shell vendors, invoices that had been inflated, over $45,000 in irregularities, all signed off by Diane. And here's the kicker. Those funds lined up perfectly with her side hustle plan to lease out community lake access for $30,000 a year. So that was the motive. Emmy Lake wasn't just about pride. It was a paycheck she desperately needed. Meanwhile, the state inspector, Patricia, showed up with her kit to sample the water. Diane strutted in with some guy she called a consultant. He fumbled his ID badge, and within 5 minutes Patricia asked him a question about dissolved oxygen testing he couldn't answer. He turned red, mumbled something, and slinked back to his car. Patricia looked at me, raised an eyebrow, and said, "This is textbook. Your restoration meets and exceeds standards." Diane's formal complaint was dismissed on the spot, and the state flagged her for submitting false information. That was the first time I felt the tide turning. Facts, science, real numbers, they were finally starting to outweigh the smoke and mirrors. It all built up to the administrative hearing. Picture a room with oak paneling, a judge tapping a pen, and Diane standing there arguing historical usage and adverse possession. She claimed the community had used the lake so long it was basically theirs. The judge asked, Can you provide evidence of actual possession? Diane shuffled her papers, stammered, and pulled out the same forged easement. My turn. I stacked my box of exhibits on the table: deed, surveys, police reports, Patricia's water assessments, Rebecca's forensic package of financial fraud. Piece by piece, I laid it out, and the judge's face tightened with every page. When it was over, he looked straight at Diane and said, "Petition denied. Further, this file will be forwarded to the district attorney for review of fraud and embezzlement." In that moment, I didn't even feel triumphant, just relieved, like I could finally breathe again. The aftermath was quieter, but no less meaningful. A few HOA members knocked on my door, apologizing, admitting they'd been swept up in Diane's theatrics. The association voted in new bylaws: mandatory audits, dual signature rules on expenditures. Diane got probation, restitution, and her license revoked. Word spread fast, and suddenly my phone started ringing again with clients who'd backed away. Even better, I was invited to speak at a water rights conference about the importance of meticulous documentation. It was surreal, turning what felt like a nightmare into something that could help other people. The last scene I'll always keep in my mind was a summer picnic by the lake. Families brought blankets, kids skipped stones, and there was a new sign by the dock, this time painted by the community: lawfully protected waters education site. It felt like victory, not just for me but for everyone who'd been misled. But as I stood there watching the ripples on the water, I couldn't shake one thought: what if I hadn't been someone with the training, the patience, the paper trail to fight back? How many others get steamrolled by people who know the system's weak spots? So I'll leave you with this: have you ever had to beat bad paperwork with good records? What would you have done first if you were in my shoes? Call the deputy, the surveyor, or the state inspector? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I think this isn't just my story. It's a question about how communities handle power, fairness, and the lengths people go when greed gets in the driver's seat.